After applying to university, I excitedly went to find Osmond. Outside the billiard hall, I heard someone inside exclaim, "You didn't apply to a university? What about Tiffany?" Osmond casually sunk a ball and nonchalantly said, "She can go alone. I was just messing with her. I never planned on going to a university." "How could you deceive such a beautiful girl? You're ruthless." Osmond smiled faintly and said, "She nags me every day, it's really annoying." Outside, it felt like a sword had pierced my heart, the pain leaving me numb. I crouched on the ground, crying for nearly half an hour, before my emotions slowly settled down. From the initial sadness and heartbreak, to later feelings of resentment and unwillingness, my emotions had rapidly fluctuated. Now, I found myself unexpectedly calm. All those intense feelings that had surged like a flood had now receded, leaving behind a quiet, peaceful sea. Wiping away my tears and taking a few deep breaths, I walked into the billiard hall. Osmond had just made a stunning clear shot, and everyone around him was applauding. When he saw me walk in, he placed the cue stick on the table and waved me over. "What are you doing out here in this heat? Don't you hate the sun?" I stared into his eyes and said seriously, "I just submitted my application." For a moment, I thought I saw guilt in his eyes, though maybe I was mistaken. Osmond cleared his throat. "Yeah, I submitted mine too." I stared at him, motionless, and said, "You promised me, if we both got into the same university, then." "Tiffany, I'm sorry, there's something I forgot to tell you." Osmond looked away, his gaze darting to the side. "My mom doesn't want me to study medicine. She forced me to apply to be university instead." "But you said your dream was to become a doctor?" I asked softly. He frowned, looking thoroughly annoyed. "You know how my mom is. She says being a doctor is too tough, too thankless, and forced me to apply to be university for finance." I lowered my head in silence. So, this was his excuse to brush me off. "Osmond, do you really think anyone would believe that? Sure, your mom is dominant, but when has she ever forced you to do something? Every time you two have argued, hasn't it always ended with her compromising?" I didn't voice any of these thoughts. I simply looked up at him and calmly asked, "So, we can't go to university together after all?" "I'm sorry, Tiffany." Osmond lowered his head, trying to soothe me. "Don't be angry. I'll take you out for dinner tonight. Besides, we're not cutting contact. We can still call and video chat." I didn't respond. I just turned and left. "Osmond, there will be no more chances. I will never contact you again." During the holiday, Osmond invited me out a few times, but I made excuses to decline each time. Eventually, he stopped asking. Still, he was very active on Instagram and I always saw his posts. He had completely let loose, hanging out with a group of friends, traveling everywhere. A few days ago, he was in the Highlands, and now, he was on the grasslands. Today, when I opened Instagram, I saw photos of him playing by the sea. There were 6 or 7 of them in the group, all people I knew, his classmates and childhood friends. There were both boys and girls, and they all took many group photos together. In one photo, he was facing away from the ocean, smiling brightly. "Look at that. Without me there, he's so happy." I remembered something I had said to him once. I told him I wanted to see the sea after graduation. At the time, he had disdainfully replied, "What's so special about the sea?" He had made it clear that he didn't want to go with me, so I never brought it up again. Turns out, it wasn't that he didn't like the sea, he just didn't want to go with me. Being pestered by her every day is really annoying. His words from the billiard hall echoed in my mind once again. The impatience in his voice felt like a blunt knife, slicing me over and over again. I never knew he felt that much annoyance towards me. Annoyed to the point of deliberately lying to me, saying he wanted to be a doctor and aiming for a university. When I applied to a university, he quietly applied to be university instead. Did he really hate me that much, afraid of going to the same university as me? I'm not shameless, I have my pride. If I had known he disliked me, I would have stopped clinging to him every day. I had once felt that he liked me too. Osmond and I grew up together. We were childhood friends, neighbors for over a decade. Our families' villas were next to each other. The first time we met was in kindergarten. At that time, my family had just moved in, and since it was a new kindergarten, all my old friends were gone, and I cried when I got there. It was Osmond who came over with a lollipop and patted my head, comforting me, "A beautiful girl like you shouldn't cry." From then on, I became Osmond's little shadow, following him wherever he went. Not just in kindergarten, but at home too. When I found out we were neighbors, I would go straight to his house, instead of even entering my own. My mom was helpless, but his mom was delighted, saying she had gained a daughter. In fact, Osmond's parents were surprised that he could be patient enough to play with me. Because Osmond used to say he didn't like playing with little girls, calling them too delicate and crying all the time. "Why do you like playing with Tiffany?" his mom once asked. "Because Tiffany is pretty, like a doll," Osmond said, pinching my cheek. "And she has dimples when she smiles. I like seeing her smile." I foolishly grinned. "I like playing with you too." Because of my parents' indulgence and the kindness of the neighbors, I grew up without many worries, carefree and happy. Spoiled children are often quite childish. Even when I entered high school, I still thought of myself as a little girl. I had always seen Osmond as an older brother. But Osmond was the one who first brought us closer. He made me realize that I had grown up and could have feelings of my own. At that time, I received my first love letter. I was stunned. A boy actually liked me? The kind of liking boys have for girls? I told Osmond about it, thinking it was a joke. But to my surprise, he immediately changed his expression. "Are you going to date him?" he asked seriously. "I don't like that boy," I replied without hesitation. "So, if someone you like comes along, you date them?" He grabbed my arm nervously. "I don't know. Tiffany, I won't allow you to like anyone else." Osmond stared at me, enunciating every word. His eyes seemed to burn with a fire, emotions swirling uncontrollably. In that moment, it suddenly dawned on me. Was I thinking what I thought I was thinking? Osmond, does he like me? Inspired by romance dramas, my mind immediately played out sweet scenarios. But I replaced the main characters with myself and him. What if Osmond and I were to have a sweet romance like in those dramas, then get married? That didn't sound too bad, right? My face began to heat up, the warmth spreading to my neck. "Anyway, you have to promise me, no dating anyone during high school," Osmond said seriously, as if giving an important order. I, lost in the fantasy of the moment, nodded eagerly. Since then, I became especially clingy with Osmond. I no longer rushed home after school to watch my favorite anime. Instead, I sat by the basketball court, waiting obediently for Osmond to finish his game before heading home with him. He would go to an internet cafe to play games, and I would sit at a nearby table, doing my homework while waiting for him. At that young age, I didn't know how to hide my feelings. My affection was obvious to everyone around me, they could all tell I liked Osmond. The way I interacted with Osmond started to slowly change. At first, he treated me like a little sister, always looking out for me. But gradually, I started to take care of him instead. He was always impatient with breakfast, so I began bringing 2 portions every morning, watching him eat with me on the way to school. When the weather was about to change, I would text him the day before, reminding him to dress warmly. When he caught a cold, I was more anxious than he was, preparing cold medicine for him. At first, he teased me, calling me a little housekeeper, but later he got more annoyed, even saying I was like his mom, always managing everything for him. I felt wronged. I was just worried about him. One day, he finally lost his temper with me. It was the winter break of our second year of high school. One evening, Osmond's friend was having a birthday party and invited him. Afraid his mom would disapprove, Osmond asked me to cover for him, saying he was going to study at a classmate's house and would stay over there. Since I had a good reputation with adults, his mom believed me and agreed that he could stay out. But that night, while I was scrolling through Instagram, I saw photos from his friend's party. They were drinking. I was shocked. Osmond had never drunk before, and he was still a student. How could he be drinking? More importantly, he hadn't fully recovered from his cold and still had a mild fever. Would drinking affect his recovery? There were so many empty bottles on the table. How much had they drunk? I started to panic. I tried calling Osmond, but he wouldn't answer. I paced around my room, feeling uneasy. Half an hour later, I couldn't take it anymore, so I went to his house and told his mom about it. That night, his mom went to the party and brought Osmond back. She also scolded his friend, saying he had led Osmond astray. Osmond was so embarrassed. After 3 days of grounding, when he finally came out, he called me and asked me to meet him. Outside my house, he yelled at me for the first time. He shouted at me to never interfere in his business again. Who do you think you are? Why do you think you have the right to control my life? I hate people like you who go behind my back and cause trouble. I had never seen Osmond so angry. When I got home, I cried for a long time. I thought, I'll never care about Osmond again. For the entire winter break, I didn't contact him. When the 3rd year of high school started, it wasn't long before my birthday. Osmond bought me a crystal ball, which I really liked. He knelt down in front of me, looked me in the eye, and in a pitiful tone said, "Tiffany, I'm sorry. Don't be mad, okay?" I was so weak, and I immediately forgave him. From then on, Osmond and I would occasionally have disagreements. But every time, after he said a few comforting words, I would calm down. In the 2nd semester of our senior year, I asked Osmond which university he was planning to apply to. He said he wanted to be a doctor and was aiming for University A. "What about you?" he asked. Without hesitation, I said, "Wherever you go, I'll go too." But I was worried I wouldn't make the cut. After all, University A had high requirements. Osmond said he would tutor me. This was another reason I was so captivated by him. Osmond was really smart. Although I worked harder than he did, my grades were always worse than his. He would always seem laid back, yet his scores were consistently great, and he was well liked by the teachers. With Osmond's tutoring and supervision, my grades finally improved. "If I get into the same university as you, will you grant me one wish?" I asked him, gazing at him hopefully. "Can I refuse?" He smiled mischievously. "No, if you refuse, I'll lose all my motivation to study." "All right, I'll promise you." He sighed, looking helpless. What that wish was, both of us knew very well. Yes, I planned to confess to him once I got into University A. When the results came out, they were just as I expected. I was in. But after applying to the university, I realized Osmond had been planning this all along. He wanted to get rid of me. When university started, other students were excited to step onto campus, but I walked in with a gloomy face, feeling utterly depressed. I felt betrayed by the boy I had once liked so much, and I sank into deep self-doubt. Am I really that unlikable? Did he go through all this trouble just to ditch me once we got to university? Osmond had always done better than me in school. It was hard enough to get into the same university as him. At one point, I had given up hope. Back then, all I wanted was to be in the same city as him after university. I didn't mind the trouble. I could visit him when I had no classes. Osmond obviously knew what I was thinking, but he didn't want that. He had deceived me just to make sure we wouldn't be in the same city. University A and University B were 1,000 miles apart. He got his wish. I spent the first semester of university like a zombie. I would zone out during class and space out during breaks, never taking my studies seriously. Compared to the other medical students around me who were focused and diligent, I felt like an outsider. I had never been interested in studying medicine, nor had I ever thought about becoming a doctor. The only reason I applied to this school was because I was so in love with Osmond. Back then, I imagined walking hand in hand with him on campus, living a carefree, shameless love life, never considering that university was a place for serious study. Things changed during the winter break of my freshman year. After the break, I flew back home. On the plane, a passenger sitting next to me had a heart attack and stopped breathing. It was the first time I had encountered such a situation, and I was completely stunned. In the chaos among the flight attendants and passengers, an older passenger took action and performed CPR on the patient. 20 minutes later, the patient started breathing normally again and woke up before the plane landed. The moment he opened his eyes, many passengers were moved to tears. It was so close, one life almost slipped away right in front of us. But now, he was alive. I could truly feel the excitement and relief. And the words that kept echoing in my mind were those of the person who saved him. "I'm a doctor." Watching that doctor save a life right in front of me was deeply shocking. I knew doctors had the duty to save lives, but I had never seen it with my own eyes. Now, I realized how admirable it was to save a life. I realized how fascinating it was to be someone who could perform such miracles. Without thinking, I told myself, I want to be like him. For the first time in my life, I felt a longing for a profession. I want to be a doctor too. I spent the entire holiday locked in my room, cramming all the lessons I had missed. I didn't go out, didn't contact Osmond, and didn't meet him even once. I didn't even know if he had gone home during the holiday. For the next few years of college, I gave it my all, struggling through every single class. Being a medical student is really tough. I felt more exhausted than I did in my senior year of high school. Every day, I got up before dawn to study and only returned to my dorm from the library after the stars came out. My schedule was packed with classes, and I never had enough time. I barely had the chance to go shopping or have fun. But the effort paid off. Each semester, I earned a scholarship, and my professors started remembering my name. Being busy really is the best cure for any kind of sentimentality. I thought less and less about Osmond, only occasionally hearing about him from old classmates. He started dating when he first got to college, and I heard it was with a beautiful girl from the foreign language department. They only lasted a little over 3 months before they broke up. In the following years, he dated several other girls, but none of the relationships lasted more than a semester. The first time I saw a photo of him with his girlfriend in our high school group chat, I felt nothing. I knew for sure I had completely let go of him. In my first year of grad school, I started dating. The guy was a sophomore. His name was Reynold, a handsome special recruit from the sports department. It was through my professor's recommendation that I became an assistant team doctor for the university's tennis team, which was when I discovered our university even had a sports department, with all special recruits. Their daily coursework had nothing to do with medicine at all. Unlike the heavy academic load that all medical students love and hate, they didn't have to study it at all. Their daily routine was just training, competition, training, competition. Having gotten used to the quiet and studious medical students, when I first visited the tennis team, seeing the players training drenched in sweat, I was fascinated. The beautiful muscle lines, their agile postures, the vitality, it was all so captivating. It felt like I had opened a door to a new world, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Reynold was the captain of the tennis team and the person I secretly watched the most. When he played, there was this confident, almost arrogant energy to him. He was super handsome. What I didn't expect was that after I treated a wound on his knee for the first time, he confessed to me. It was so direct, I didn't see it coming. I was caught off guard and, in a daze, agreed without even thinking about it. Will you be my girlfriend? Okay. Later, I found out from Reynold's teammates that he had been secretly in love with me since his first year of college. It all started when I gave him a Band-Aid. That triggered a vague memory for me. A year ago, I had seen a guy outside the campus supermarket who accidentally cut his hand open while unboxing something. Blood immediately started pouring out from his finger. I quickly opened my bag and rummaged through it. Seeing a pink Peppa Pig Band-Aid, I hesitated for a second but still handed it over. I only remember that the guy was kind of cute. When he put on the Peppa Pig Band-Aid, his face turned bright red all the way to his ears. That was Reynold. What a twist of fate. He told me the whole team knew he had a crush on me because he would attend our elective courses just to see me. His friends encouraged him to go after me, but when he heard I was known as the study freak in our college, he didn't dare confess, afraid I'd be too focused on my studies. He was ecstatic when I became the team doctor assistant. His teammates would tease him, saying he acted like a peacock around me, showing off every skill he had, trying to impress me. Finally, one of his friends couldn't take it anymore and told him, if he didn't confess soon, he would step in. When Reynold heard that his friend had developed feelings for me too, he panicked. That day, while I was treating his knee, his friend deliberately said, "Tiffany, do you have time later?" "I want to." "She doesn't have time." Reynold immediately interrupted him and looked up at me. "Will you be my girlfriend?" When I heard myself say, "Okay," he was so stunned, he thought he misheard. It wasn't until his friend nudged him and said, "What are you frozen for? Didn't you hear her say yes?" That's when he came to his senses and grinned at me like an idiot. After that, Reynold kept asking me if I had secretly liked him all along. Otherwise, why would I agree to be his girlfriend so quickly? "You became our team doctor because of me, didn't you? Just wanted to see me every day, right?" You're just pretending to be calm, but you're secretly in love with me. Do you really base your relationships on imagination? I couldn't help but laugh. Can't you just lie to me a little, make me happy? Actually, I fell for you at first sight. It was all part of my plan to get close to you. Huh. I knew it. He proudly lifted his chin. Damn it, you've outsmarted me. Haha, he's quite cute. Although Reynold is younger than me, he takes care of me more when we're together. Young people have so much energy. He does an hour of physical training every morning, rain or shine. Before we got together, he used to get up at 6:30 a.m., train, then have breakfast. After we started dating, he changed to waking up at 6 a.m. so that he could finish his training just in time to have breakfast with me. Sometimes, when I'm too lazy to eat, he buys breakfast and brings it downstairs for me. You really don't have to be this hardworking, waking up so early. Lack of sleep is bad for your health, I said, feeling a little guilty. Don't worry, I'm fine, he grinned. You're my energy source. Just seeing you for a few minutes every morning keeps me full of energy for the rest of the day. Maybe it's because Reynold knows how to take care of people so well, but after being with him, I started to think that love is really wonderful. We've never fought because whenever there's a disagreement, he always lets me have my way. And he really pampers me. I found myself becoming more and more dependent on him. I used to think of myself as very independent, solving everything on my own. Now, even when I just want a cup of coffee, my first thought isn't to order takeout on my phone, but to ask Reynold to bring it to me. Sugar-coated traps really do erode the heart. He said he wanted to spoil me until I couldn't live without him. Looks like he succeeded. During the winter break, Reynold took me to the airport. Are you really not letting me go back with you? He said, pretending to be hurt. You've asked me that 180 times already, I replied, exasperated. Actually, I can go without a label. I'll stay at a hotel nearby, and you can come visit me when you have time. Just promise me you won't forget me. How come I never noticed this guy was such a drama queen? Fine, I'll video call you every day. You better keep your word. Finally, after calming this clingy guy down, I waved goodbye and turned to leave. Osmond's mom invited our family over for dinner. Today, Osmond brought his girlfriend home, my mom said. His mom said it's been a while since the two families have had a meal together, so it's a good chance to catch up. Wow, Osmond brought his girlfriend home? This is the first time. My gossip-loving side was immediately intrigued. Is she pretty? She's supposed to be quite beautiful. Well, Osmond always has high standards. My mom laughed. When you were little, we used to joke that you and Osmond would make a couple. Do you remember? I pretended to be clueless. Really? I don't remember. In my mind, Osmond has always been like my brother. Well, fate is a funny thing. You and Osmond grew up together, but no love blossomed, just sibling bonds, which is fine too. But he's had a few girlfriends already. You're in grad school now, how come you don't have a boyfriend? My mom gave me a meaningful look. You're in your 20s now, it's time. I cleared my throat. Mom, you don't have a problem with age gap relationships, do you? My mom immediately perked up, her eyes sparkling as she fixed her gaze on me. Do you have a boyfriend? An age gap relationship? How many years apart? Only 3 years. Not bad. Where does he go to school? By the time we arrived at Osmond's house, my mom was still grilling me about Reynold's personal details. My dad seemed indifferent on the surface, but he was listening very intently. When we got to Osmond's house, I saw a beautiful girl sitting on the couch. She was wearing a white dress, calm and elegant. After graduating from university, Osmond didn't go to grad school, but joined his family's business, learning management from his dad. This girl was his assistant. I heard she graduated from a prestigious school, and within a month of joining the company, she became Osmond's assistant. Not long after, they started dating. His mom mentioned that this girl's parents were both high school teachers, so she came from a scholarly family. Compared to Osmond's last girlfriend, who had tattoos all over her arms, his mom was 100% happy with this one. Though he never brought a girlfriend home before, he has had quite a few relationships. There was one girl who worked as a bartender at a bar. I was really worried Osmond would get too involved with her. I mean, how simple can a girl working at a bar be? Fortunately, they only dated for a month before breaking up. His mom had said this to my mom during their conversation earlier. It seems Osman's love life had been quite colorful these past few years. After we arrived, the older folks went to the small living room to chat, while I sat on the couch in the main living room, playing on my phone and watching Osmond and his girlfriend be all lovey-dovey. The two of them sitting in front of me were completely attached to each other. It was only when we first walked in that Osmond greeted me, and then he lowered his head to teach his girlfriend how to play a game. "You're so slow. Don't run around, just stay behind me." "Why did you miss that? Now you're going to attract the enemies." After hearing a few lines, I quickly figured out what game they were playing. I thought of Reynold, since he had also played this game with me before. I'm not good at games, I even get lost in big houses, because I can't figure out the directions. But Reynold is way gentler with me. No matter what mistake I made, even if I revealed our location and got him killed in the final circle, he would never get angry. He would just say with a smile, "It's fine, it's just a game." At dinner, the elders praised Osman's girlfriend. My mom even asked, "When are you planning to get married?" Osman just smiled without answering. I noticed his girlfriend's smile falter slightly at the corner of her lips. "By the way, Tiffany, do you have a boyfriend?" Osman's mom asked with a smile. Before I could answer, my mom jumped in. "Yes, she does. And it's an age gap relationship." Osmond nearly choked on his drink, and his girlfriend quickly patted his back to help him. "Age gap relationship? How many years apart?" Osmond's dad asked eagerly. 3 years. He's in his second year of university, I answered. Only 3 years? That's not much of a difference. Osmond's mom asked, "When are you bringing him over to meet us?" For some reason, just thinking about Reynolds' face made my lips curl up in a smile. Since being with him, I really feel like I've become happier and more easily excited. "I'll bring him over when I'm on break," I said thoughtfully. "If I go back home, I'll bring him over to hang out." Osmond put down his chopsticks and turned to my parents. "I'm full." He stood up and left the table. His girlfriend also hurriedly put down her chopsticks and gave us an apologetic smile. "I'm full too." Then, she stood up and followed Osmond. After dinner, I didn't see Osmond or his girlfriend around the living room anymore. After playing for a while, I left with my parents to go home. In the afternoon, I went out to pick up a package. When I opened the door, I was startled to see a tall figure leaning against the doorframe. "What are you doing here? Are you in a relationship?" He stared at me, his emotions unreadable. I nodded. Osmond was silent for a long time before speaking. "I'm sorry." "What?" I was confused. "For the way I acted back when we applied to college," he explained. "Oh, it's fine. That was so long ago, I almost forgot about it. I was immature back then, wanting everything my way. I felt like you were too controlling and too clingy, so I wanted to break free, just to catch my breath. That's why I lied to you and said I wanted to become a doctor. I knew that if I applied to University A, you would have applied to the same school. That had really upset me for a long time back then. His behavior was hurtful. But it's been years, and I've really gotten over it now." I comforted him. "It's fine, Osmond. I'm not mad anymore. It was my selfishness that hurt you. I only cared about myself and didn't think about your future. You have your own dreams, your own things you want to do. I shouldn't have decided your future so carelessly." Osmond's voice was tinged with bitterness. "I heard that studying medicine is tough. You have to do both your bachelor's and master's in a row, and it's so many years of hard work. If you never wanted to be a doctor, it must be really hard for you." "Actually, I like medicine," I interrupted him. I was frustrated for a while. The subjects were so tough and confusing that I even thought about repeating a year and changing majors. But later, I changed my mindset. I fell in love with medicine, and now my dream is to be a competent surgeon. I even get a scholarship every year. I'm pretty awesome." Osmond chuckled softly, patting my head like when we were kids. "Really? That's amazing?" "Of course," I said proudly. "Well, I wish you the best of luck." "Thanks." I felt a little embarrassed. I'm sorry, Osmond. I used to be so clingy, I must have bothered you a lot. I was immature, don't take it to heart. He smiled. You were never a bother to me. The one who was immature back then was me. Not long after school started, one day, I was on a date with Reynold when I suddenly got a call from Osmond. Are you free tonight? Let me take you out to dinner. He got straight to the point. I was surprised. But we're not even in the same city. How could you take me out to dinner? I'm coming for a business trip. But I already made plans with Reynold to have dinner tonight. Reynold? Your boyfriend, right? Bring him along. What, do you think I'll eat you? All right then. 6 o'clock, I'll pick you two up at your school. After hanging up, Reynold asked, who was that? Just a friend, my neighbor. He's here for a business trip and wants to treat us to dinner. At 6 in the evening, my phone rang right on time. Osmond said he was downstairs at my dorm. I was surprised. But I never told you my address. He replied casually, is that so difficult? Didn't you say you're famous for being the top student here? You can just ask any classmate. I quickly called Reynold to meet me downstairs at our dorm. When I went down, I saw Reynold already standing at the door. I jogged over and took his hand, heading outside. A black sedan was parked outside the dorm building. With its flashy logo and luxurious appearance, it looked outrageously expensive. Such cars are rarely seen on this simple campus, and many students were stopping to stare. Even more outrageous was the tall, handsome guy in a suit standing by the car. Not wanting to become the center of attention, I hurriedly pulled Reynold past the car and gave Osmond a look, signaling him to hurry. Osmond, being a gentleman, opened the car door for me to get in. Since there was a driver, Reynold and I sat in the back, and Osmond sat in the front passenger seat. Why do you look so flustered getting into the car? Osmond asked with a smile after the car started moving. Your car and your presence are just too flashy. I didn't want to be the center of attention, I said, laughing. My bad, Osmond apologized in a good-natured tone. When we arrived at the restaurant, I immediately saw the extravagant decor. And even more over the top, everyone inside was dressed in formal attire, men in suits, women in evening dresses. Reynold and I stood out like sore thumbs. He was in sportswear, and I, even more ridiculously, was wearing a puffy down jacket. Once seated, I whispered to Osmond, why such a fancy place? Didn't you say we were just having a casual dinner? Osmond chuckled, this is casual enough. I was worried that Reynold might feel uncomfortable here, but he was eating as happily as anyone, acting completely at ease. I guess I was just overthinking it. After returning to campus, Reynold asked, confused, that Osmond, is he really 3 years older than me? Yeah, he's the same age as me, I nodded. He looks so refined, but his actions are so childish. How do you mean? Reynold hugged me. He likes you, I can tell. Tonight, he was just trying to show off in front of me to make me feel inferior. But I'm not falling for it. My inner strength is strong. Plus, you like me, that's my greatest wealth. He can never compete with that. How can that be? He has a girlfriend, and he's met her parents. A man's intuition is never wrong. After that dinner, Osmond started coming to our city frequently on business. He would often come to school to see me. In the last 6 months, I had seen him more times than in the previous 4 years combined. And every time we met, he brought me gifts. I posted on Instagram with a picture from a mall, where a 6-pointed star bracelet was visible in the corner of the display case. 2 days later, Osmond came to see me and brought me the bracelet. It was outrageous. That was just a random photo I posted, I hadn't even noticed the bracelet in the corner of the picture. I started to realize that things were going beyond my expectations. When Osmond came to town again for business and asked to meet, I made an excuse to refuse. After rejecting him 3 times in a row, he called me. Are you avoiding me? No, I've just been really busy lately. I played dumb, I haven't even had time to hang out with my boyfriend. Reynold keeps complaining about me. You don't need to spend time. Just tell me where to meet, I'll come, and we'll just meet briefly. Osmond, we're in a closed lab, and the professor is very strict. It's really inconvenient. I insisted on refusing. Then I'll wait downstairs at your dorm. You always have to come back to rest, right? I'll just see you for a moment. Osmond's tone was firm. I sighed. Looks like I had no choice but to meet him. That evening, when I returned to the dorm, Osmond was waiting downstairs. This time, he didn't bring his flashy car. To avoid standing out, he had changed into casual clothes instead of his usual tailored suit. Chestnut cakes, my mom asked me to bring them for you, he said, holding up a box. It's a gift from the elders, you can't refuse this time. I thought for a moment. Let's find somewhere to sit and talk. We sat at a small tea shop outside the back gate of the school. The small tables and cramped space made Osmond's long legs look even more out of place. I can tell you haven't been to places like this in a while, I spoke first. Without realizing it, we've become people from two different worlds. You're the CEO who frequents high-end places, while I'm just a student buried in my studies. Tiffany, don't distance yourself from me like this, Osmond's voice was full of sadness. It hurts to hear you say that. But I'm just stating the truth. We grew up together, and that's fate. But after the college entrance exams, we went our separate ways, and our connection ended. That's the biggest regret of my life, Osmond said, his eyes filled with a sadness I couldn't understand. I didn't really get it. If I had known that separating from you would lead to this, I would never have done that, Osmond said, staring at me the whole time. Actually, I started regretting it shortly after school began. Tiffany, do you know what it's like to miss someone? I used to be annoyed with you for always clinging to me, wanting to be free. But now that we're apart and you're not by my side, I realize how much I can't live without you. He put his hands on his forehead. I didn't realize how important you were to me. You were like air, there, but invisible, and yet so essential. Back then, I hated always seeing you. Now that I'm in college, I realize how happy those days were. Now, seeing you is so hard. I laughed. Do you even believe what you're saying, Osmond? You started dating someone as soon as school began. In the past few years of college, I bet you've had more girlfriends than you can count. Now you're playing the deep, sentimental card with me? At this point, I was losing patience. I didn't even want to see him again. Our families were neighbors, and our elders had a good relationship. I had been played with over something as big as college applications, but since it was already in the past, I chose to let it go for the sake of our family's relationship. But that didn't mean I respected his character. I could maintain a surface-level peace for the elders, but privately, I would never get any closer to him. This is what happens when you make one mistake, you keep making them, Osmond said with a bitter smile. I was young back then and didn't understand where all that inexplicable pride came from. I thought if I contacted you first, it would make me seem lower, so I refused to take that first step. I thought that if I had a girlfriend, I wouldn't think about you anymore. But even after dating someone, that emptiness inside me still couldn't be filled. I realized that wasn't what I wanted. I even had my friends leak the news of my relationship to you, hoping you'd reach out to me. But there was nothing on your end. I couldn't accept that, so I changed girlfriends again and got stuck in a vicious cycle. You've got an interesting way of thinking, I said bluntly. So you've always liked me? And the way to show you like someone is by constantly changing girlfriends? Well, that's just your own fault. Yeah, it is my fault, he admitted directly. When I found out you had a boyfriend, I realized how wrong I'd been all these years. You weren't just angry with me, you really had let me go. I was so sure that you hadn't been in a relationship all these years, thinking you were waiting for me. Osmond, no one waits for another person forever. I'm not that naive, and you're not worth it. I know. I don't deserve you to wait for me. I was wrong, and I know that now, he said desperately, grabbing my hand. Tiffany, I'll change. If you like someone like Reynold, gentle and caring, I can be like that too. From now on, I'll be whatever you want me to be. Can you give me one more chance? I pulled my hand away firmly. I have a boyfriend, and I like him. You have a girlfriend. I've broken up with her. I don't have a girlfriend anymore, he said urgently. That's your problem, I said coldly. But I won't break up with my boyfriend. This is the last time I'm seeing you. Don't come looking for me again. It's annoying. As I stood to leave, I saw Osmond slumped over the table, his shoulders shaking. After that, Osmond never tried to contact me again. It was good. He had finally figured it out. Reynold and I were in a stable relationship, still very sweet. After graduating from grad school, I joined the hospital back home and became a surgeon, just as I had hoped. Work was busy, but my relationship with Reynold didn't cool down. He always made an effort to accommodate me. Sometimes when I had to work overtime, he would bring me nutritious meals to the hospital and sit with me while I ate during my short break. No matter how busy, he always found ways to meet me. Even my mom said that Reynold treated me too well and had done so much for me. "You can't take him for granted," my mom would say. I was 28, and Reynold was 25 when he proposed to me. That year, he had also graduated from grad school. His family ran a chain of sporting goods stores, and he had started taking over the business. "I've been wanting to propose to you for a while, but back then, I was still in school and couldn't give you a stable life. Now, I'm working, and from now on, I'll take care of earning money for the family. You just need to do what you love," Reynold told me. I smiled and nodded through tears. On our wedding day, I was in the dressing room, flipping through wedding photos on my phone while waiting for the makeup artist to finish my look. After drinking a glass of water, I suddenly felt dizzy and blacked out. When I woke up again, I was in a villa. Standing by the large glass window, I could see the ocean outside. "You're awake?" a voice came from behind. I turned around and saw Osmond standing there. "You're illegally detaining me," I said calmly. "I don't care. I can't just stand by and watch you marry someone else." He walked closer. "The thought of you spending your life with another man, having children with him, it tortures me, makes me feel like killing someone. If I have to lose you for the rest of my life, what's the point of me living? You're just not thinking straight." "There's no one who can't live without another person," I said, trying to reason with him. "When we first broke up in college, I felt like there was no reason to live. But I got through it, didn't I? Osmond, don't get stuck in your own head. Maybe in a couple of years, you'll meet the one you're really meant to be with." Osmond shook his head. "You think I haven't tried? After you said we'd never meet again, I thought about just letting go. You didn't love me, and I couldn't force you. I tried living without you and even went on blind dates. But it was so hard, every day was torture. I couldn't stop thinking about you, and I couldn't sleep at night. I've accepted it, I can't live without you. I won't let you marry someone else. I've been secretly following you, watching you live with that man, and desperately making money. The only way I can get you back is by becoming strong enough to take you away. You're crazy. Just consider me crazy. You said you liked the ocean, didn't you? I specially bought this seaside villa for you. Do you like it?" Osmond said, his eyes full of tenderness. "From now on, we'll live here together. You need help, you should see a therapist," I said coldly. Osmond seemed not to hear me and continued talking. "When I figure out how to get our marriage certificate, we'll be legally married. From now on, we'll live here, and you'll give me 2 lovely children. Whatever you want, I can give you. I just want to leave here. My cooking's not great, but I'll do my best to make it work for now. When you behave better, I'll hire a chef to cook for us. For now, this is our world, and I don't trust anyone else coming here. Osmond, don't keep making mistakes. It's not too late to turn back now. Do you like flowers and plants? I'll have more planted in the garden for you." I realized Osmond was losing his grip on reality. To avoid provoking him, I kept my tone calm, not doing anything extreme, not getting angry, not yelling, not throwing things. It was just the 2 of us here, and I had to think about my safety. I didn't have my phone, and there was no phone, TV, or computer in the villa. The villa doors were locked, and I couldn't leave. I'd been here for 2 months, completely cut off from the outside world. But I wasn't too panicked. So far, Osmond hadn't shown any intent to harm me. At least, my life wasn't in danger. And Osmond spent every day here with me. After disappearing with him for so long, my parents and Reynold would surely connect the dots. I believed they would find me. Maybe because I was obedient enough, Osmond began to relax more. Occasionally, he would leave the villa for a day or 2. He must have been handling business matters. After all, living here required a lot of money to maintain. I breathed a little easier. As long as he went out, he'd leave traces behind, and my hiding place might be found. Over 3 months since the wedding day, I finally waited for the police to arrive. Along with the police, my parents and Reynold were there. When they barged into the villa, Osmond and I were eating together. Seeing them, I ran toward them. When the police took him away, Osmond actually had a smile on his face. That's enough. These 3 months were stolen time. Having spent them with you, I'm already content, he said calmly. I knew this day would come sooner or later. Do you think this is fair to your parents? They worked hard to raise you, not for you to give up your own life for someone else, I said, feeling no sympathy for him, only pity for his parents. I owe them. I've left enough money for them. I believe they'll be fine without me, he said without a hint of guilt. I just love you too much. Love? I scoffed. No, you don't love anyone. You only love yourself. If you truly loved someone, you wouldn't disregard their future and force them to attend a school they're not interested in. If you really loved someone, you wouldn't go through one girlfriend after another. If you loved someone, you wouldn't do things to hurt them. Back when I graduated, I wanted to work at a better hospital, but couldn't get in. You were the one who sabotaged it, weren't you? Just to push me back to the hospital in my hometown. You never cared about my wishes, and now you still have the nerve to say you love me? No, Osmond, you've never understood love. You're just selfish, I interrupted. You only ever think of yourself and never consider anyone else's feelings. No, Osmond said, crouching down in pain. I love you. Only I know how much I love you. In his delirium, he was forcibly taken away by the police. Turning around, the 3 people I loved most were waiting for me. Reynold took my hand. Let's go home. Yeah, home. I nodded, tears in my eyes. Love is the most complicated emotion in the world. Perhaps, love has different ways of expressing itself. But at the very least, love is not about hurting someone. If someone uses the name of love to hurt others, the only thing we can do is to quickly distance ourselves. End of the story.